Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Clause YouTube channel, Strategic Frontlines. Today we have with us a very powerful panel, and we are going to discuss the West Asia conundrum. We have with us Dr. Meena Singh Roy. She is the chairperson of the Greater West Asia Forum and also heads the West and Central Asia Center at Tilotma Foundation. We also have Col Rajeev Agarwal. He's the senior research consultant at Chintan Research Foundation. And also welcome Mr. Kabir Taneja. He's the deputy director and Middle East specialist. He's from ORF. I welcome all of you to this podcast. And firstly, as we know that the Israelis have continued to intensify the ongoing conflict in Gaza, it further launched an airstrike on Doha, stating that they were targeting Hamas leaders who were there to discuss US-backed ceasefire proposals. And in a show of solidarity, the leaders from GCC met. While there were strong rhetorical condemnations, there were no major outcomes in terms of any economic or political reprisals. We also saw US Secretary of State Marco Rubio visiting Israel and Qatar. On the other front, Iran, there is a possibility of having a breakthrough agreement with IAEA, and also they had a diplomatic talks with Saudi Arabia. As far as Houthis are concerned, these are the major three topics. So Israelis' airstrikes since July have increasingly targeted Houthi vital infrastructures, including their ports. And the cycle of Houthis' maritime attack and missile strike has led to global shipping being vulnerable in the Red Seas. With this as a background, my first question is to Dr. Meena. Firstly, do you think that the Qatar will agree to mediate in future, or it will try to reevaluate? Is there do you feel that there is a willingness by the Israelis to strike targets anywhere to eliminate the perceived threats, what they see? And could it lead to a reassessment of alliances and security partnership in the region? Your views. You can give your initial statements and then answer the questions.
Yeah. Let me address your first question where you said that will Qatar mediate? To that effect, the Qatar has already, said that they would continue to mediate, though they did, raise the issues of the problems and the challenges which they faced in terms of the strike which happened. So there are concerns, but it appears that they would continue to mediate. Right. Now, how is this going to affect the, whether the Israel will continue to strike? If we go by the statements which are coming from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, then it's very clear that they will continue to strike. That is what the statements are, and we will have to wait and watch how. But if you look at the statements of Netanyahu as well, they said that anywhere in the world they would do it if that be the case. Now, Qatar and Turkey, are two countries which they have constantly, talked about, saying that they are sheltering the radical elements and that there's a support. So this is something which will happen. When now coming to the alliances now, I mean, how it is going to unfold in future. The region did show this, I would say, the solidarity when it comes to such an attack. This was the first attack on the GCC country. There were much expectations saying the recently held, Arab Islamic Emergency Summit, which happened. But I mean, my analysis even before it was held was that they were only probably going to use the harsh words, but there are, in terms of actions, probably there are not going to come up many strong actions that they would take. Now there is a different dynamics in the region, I would say. Why, as far as Qatar is concerned, it's part of the GCC. We know blockade of Qatar. We know how Qatar has been probably engaging with Taliban or Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. So these are the elements of, I would say, their foreign policy, which is focused even on the mediation part of it. So I think this is it's a small state, but it's a very I would say a state which not only entertains the Americans, it has the Turkish base, it has the NATO base, and it is also trying to probably play the role where their power and authority and their capability to show themselves as a very I would say a constructive partner in terms of mediating and solving the issues of the conflicts and the wars which are happening in the region. Now, to what extent they would continue for now, I think Qatar has said for now that they would continue to. GCC countries were never united. If we look back, there would be condemnation. They would condemn the attack, and they would continue to use the strong words. But in terms of actions, I don't see the possibility that they're going to probably take a harsher stand on Israel. At least that is the case so far. I personally feel, you can only look at the short-term development as far as this region is concerned. What can surprise tomorrow the rest of the world, we don't know. And Qatar and the GCC, and even I would say the other, states, while they criticize United States of America, but is there a substitute to United States? Are they going to really see some country now? Who is that country which just provide them security? So are they diversifying? So in many ways they have started diversifying, but they still want the US security. They still want the US arms. So despite so much of issues and problems with the West and particularly the United States, US still continues to be a player in the region. So I can come back if maybe others can contribute, and then we can discuss it further as well.
Absolutely. So I would like to get in here, Colonel Agarwal. What are firstly your initial assessments? What do you take of this conflict? And also, do you feel there are structural weaknesses as far as the unity in Middle East is concerned? Because Israel has been able to do more or less whatever it wanted. And the other issue, what I would like to discuss with you is Iran. Do you feel Iran will have a breakthrough as far as its negotiations with IAEA is concerned? And their diplomatic talks with Saudi Arabia. So do you feel that the Iran-Saudi Arabia data, will it be sustainable? You need to unmute your mic.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Roshan, for the invite. And, this is a very turbulent time as far as West Asia is concerned. And the strike in Qatar, which happened on 9th September, was, absolutely surprising and shocking, because this was not a step that people would have thought that Israel would take. But having taken this step and, with the kind of statements that are coming out of Israel, whether the Speaker of the Knesset or the Israeli Prime Minister, we also saw Marco Rubio going to, Tel Aviv and having a discussion with Netanyahu, in which nothing came out, in which would indicate that US is trying to prevent Israel from doing anything in the future. The Qatari Amir went to Washington straight away after the strike and came back, and there was nothing much. So I don't think, there are two things to me which are clear. One is that Israel has now moved on to this road of strike at
I, uh,
I think there is
we can't hear. I
some
think
problem.
there's some problem with
Can't hear.
Col Agarwal. I think, yeah, he till the time he comes in, I'd like to get in Mr. Taneja. Uh, firstly, your initial remarks, and also I would like to ask you: is the U.S. losing its ability to influence and control its allies in the Middle East? Is there what you call it shift from U.S. centric security guarantee to more multipolar equilibrium in West Asia? And do you feel that Marco Rubio and Trump are saying two different languages? Like Trump was not very happy with the attack and wants to end, but he is giving unwavered support to Israel. Or are they trying to balance each other, or what? Colonel Agrawal, we'll just come back to you once he has finished.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, first and foremost, for the invitation. Look, I'll just make a couple of very brief points about some of the questions that you have raised, and of course, the broader issue of the Qatar-Israel kerfuffle that we have sort of witnessed over the past few days, over the past week. Look, I think first and foremost, it's very important to remember that Israel is one of the premier foreign policy deliverables for the US. And that does not change irrespective of who's in power, right? So Marco Rubio can have his own opinions, all well and good, but ultimately at the end of the day, what President Trump says and what the Israeli lobby pushes in Washington, D.C. Is of critical importance, and which ultimately drives decision making in for the US in the Middle East. So any expectation that the US is going to turn the keys off on Israel, I think that's a bad reading of how the US has sort of dealt with the Israel issue since 1947, 1948. And let's be very clear also. The policy was no different under Biden. The Biden administration was also wholesomely committed in Israel's protection. They continue to arm Israel to the teeth, despite having significant differences on Israel's approach in Gaza, despite having significant losses domestically within their own constituencies on the civilian casualty that was coming in Gaza, right? But the US has persisted and will persist unless there is a fundamental shift that takes place within American thinking and American foreign policy. And very quickly, sort of on the issue of Qatar. Look, the office in 2012 that Hamas opened up was at the behest of the Americans. There is no way Qatar would have done that if the Americans were not on board, and even the Israelis, till a certain extent, were not on board. There was a report in the Washington Post recently, clearly leaked in a very timely manner, as it happens in DC, which said that the Mossad chief was actually very worried that all the capacities they've built with Doha over the past couple of years, including dealing with Hamas, including dealing with Hezbollah, and including dealing with Iran, mind you, will be lost, and all those sort of opportunities will be done because there is a gap between how the Israeli military is thinking, how the Israeli intelligence is thinking, and how Prime Minister Netanyahu's office is thinking. If you just follow the Israeli pattern or Israeli domestic politics, which I think is very critical in understanding what is happening regionally and is often lost in the narrations that we consume on the Middle East. The Israeli armed forces, yes, they are conducting the operations as advised by the civilian government, but they have significant reservations. They don't want to be in Gaza for the next 3-4 years because they know it is going to be a war of attrition. They know they're going to lose soldiers, and that those losses will sort of seep into Israeli society because everyone serves there. So there are fundamental differences even within the Israeli establishment on what is the best way forward. The Israelis have a very fundamental problem also with the fact that they have a declared military deliverable, which is the elimination of Hamas, right? So they have sort of eliminated Yahya Sinwar, they have eliminated Ismail Haniya, and so on and so forth, but Hamas still has persisted. in various shapes of form. I think in the latest assessment, they still say there are 3,500 fighters in Gaza that are part of Hamas, and the political leadership is still sort of active outside. So after 2 years, if the elimination of top leaderships have not given the death blow to Hamas, then there has to be a question raised that what is the best way forward, because you can keep on doing this, and Hamas, as this as the terminology goes, they can keep on respawning, they can keep on adding new political leaders, they can keep on adding even new military fighters in Gaza, using the current situation, which is very dire in Gaza, to continue recruitment. So I think, yes, what has happened in Qatar is basically the Israelis basically pushing their agenda that they want Hamas eliminated, but simultaneously they also need to talk to Hamas if hostages have to be released. So they are trying to do this two-track thing where they are militarily active against Hamas, but also have to politically deal with Hamas if the remaining hostages have to be freed. Now, if you keep on eliminating the top brass, I'm not sure who are you going to negotiate with. So it's a catch-22 situation for Israel that sort of they have created for themselves as well over the past 2 years. But Qatar is a very Qatar has deeper issues. Of course, if you go back, the Saudis had a blockade against them for supporting political Hamas, and right now it's all very rosy language on brotherhood and Arab consolidation. Let's be very clear: GCC is not a homogeneous organization. They have varied differences and they have varied opinions on how the situation should be dealt with. And finally, just very quickly, there is the fact that you mentioned, Dr. Rohan, in your opening sort of set of remarks, that the Doha emergency meeting delivered nothing. Everyone turned up, but there has been no pushback. The Qataris have been asking the Emiratis to cancel the Abraham Accords. I highly doubt that is going to happen. It may happen if the Israelis decide to act on the West Bank. But till then, I think everyone is very, very precariously balanced on their own domestic and security agendas to rankle the crib a bit too much, so that effects come on them.
Before I move on to Meena, I'll just ask Col Agarwal, you can finish off where you started.
Yeah, thank you. I think there was some interruption due to internet.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was talking about Qatar and Israel and US. So Israel has already taken its objective down the road where there's no reversing back. So if and when they think that a target has presented itself, irrespective of the country or the scope, they are going to take it down. And like Kabir also mentioned, there is no way in hell that US is going to stop them. What we have heard from Marco Rubio, what the Qatari Amir went to Washington, has come back. There's nothing to say it happened. There are a number of reports and leaks which are coming that US was not informed 10 minutes in advance. It knew about it. And being a military person, I find it impossible to believe that a 10 aircraft fleet could take off from Israel, fly along the Persian Gulf or the Red Sea, whichever route they took, and shoot off missiles, and the world's largest military, the most sophisticated military with air defense, missile defense, and satellite defense, needs a phone call to be alerted that a missile is incoming. It is ridiculous, to say the least. So US and Israel were totally hand in hand. US was totally complicit. I have no doubts about it, and I've written about it. As far as Qatar is concerned, it has taken a beating both for its reputation inside domestically and in the region. But like Dr. Meena said, it does not have any option, because mediating their talks is the one, hosting Taliban, hosting Hamas is the one which has given it its prominence in the region as a mediator. Otherwise, Qatar, apart from the gas money, etc., it had nothing. It has gained prominence because of what it has done as a mediator, and it is likely to continue unless there are more such attacks which actually then force Qatar or the other nations in the region to take action which is more proactive and more physical. Coming to the emergency summit, like Kabir said, there were 25 points in it, and all were beautifully paraphrased in the best of the English language, talking about everything that is happening in the region. The only point which indicated towards some kind of substance was the ninth point, where they said they need to evolve a shared vision for security. Now, it is a very vague kind of a term, and nobody has the will or the capacity to evolve a shared vision for security in the current context in the Gulf region. So it is unlikely that something is going to happen unless it is forced upon the region through another or repeated strikes by Israel into some other territories. And uh, it has already hinted directly and indirectly that Turkey and Egypt could be the other places where such Hamas and other operatives have been given shelter or are being hosted. Coming to the Iran question, I think the failure of the US and Israel strikes to completely demolish the Iran nuclear program is a win for Iran. And it has been tacitly, directly, and indirectly acknowledged by the entire fraternity in the West that the nuclear program was damaged, but it has not been destroyed. It has been delayed by weeks. It has been delayed by months. There are all sorts of assessment, and the 400 plus, kg of uranium enriched to 60% plus has still not been discovered. By all accounts, it has been safely, kept by Iran in some. So, what is the option? EU, the E3 or the IAEA can go back to imposing the snapback sanction, which is the most obvious thing that can happen. But will it serve the purpose of the Western power? The answer is no. The only way that Iran's nuclear program can still be monitored, can still be restricted in a manner that it does not weaponize too quickly, is to keep Iran engaged. So the meeting with the IAEA chief Rossi, which happened about a week back, in which there was a broad agreement that the talks will happen and there'll be some kind of agreement, framework agreement with IAEA, is a positive development both for the Iran as well as the Western powers who are keen to have a check on Iran's nuclear program. The third question was on Iran and Saudi. I mean, ever since the March 2023 peace deal with China had brokered, there has been a forward movement as far as diplomatic engagement with Saudi Arabia and Iran is concerned. We all saw how Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others led the condemnation of Israel when Iran was attacked on 13th of June and the 12-day war ensued. Inside and quietly, they would have been happy that the nuclear program has been damaged, and damaged badly. But in the overall thing and assessment, I would say that Saudi Arabia and Iran are engaging in a very cautious manner, but the baby steps are in the positive direction.
Okay. Dr. Roy, I'll now try to bring you in, and I want to ask you, do you think there are blurring lines between state and non-state actors? And do you feel the Middle East, it's entering a state of managed instability? And do you feel that the non-state actors still hold some influence? How effective is it? And also, we were talking about Abraham Accord. So if you can also elaborate on that also. You
State
need
and
to unmute
non-state
you.
actors. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible.
Well, this whole debate about state and non-state actors, I mean, yes, the people who've been working on, these issues, there is opinion that there is actually no non-state actors today. They've more become a state actors. This is what was discussed even yesterday. And there's belief that there's a very blur line. You're right. Whether we look at any of these non-state, so-called non-state actors, there is a direct or indirect support to them. So the involvement of state is very much there. You also talked about this managed stability. Now, it's a really term where managing stability is somewhat a word I don't know. But what I can say is today, the situation that is unfolding in Middle East, there are many dimensions to it. It is today, if you look at it, Israel is going completely, in a different way, and it is going in a different way because the priority for them is securing their own security in the region, especially after October 7. If you look at their new security strategy, as they have talked about publicly, and it has been published in various journals and reports, and also the statements coming from the ambassadors, so they feel that it's basically the military which is solution that they are looking at. Although Kabir, brought about a very important point: the division between, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and what Netanyahu wants. So there are certain decisions which are imposed, and the society, which is looking at the release of hostages. So they feel Netanyahu is continuing its own aims and goal of greater Israel, whether it is achievable or not achievable, but they are not stopping simply for one reason, which is the support of United States of America. Now, Marco Rubio was there. So I think it is more about managing the crisis, the stability. I don't know, it's a word which may take years as far as, but say about 7 to 8 years back, I used to say there are pockets of stability in Middle East, it was mainly Gulf. But look at the Houthis who are operating, disrupting the maritime trade, and because of the war in Gaza. And so I don't know whether security, the stability part is something which I'm little pessimistic about it. But I guess nobody wants probably this kind of a war and instability in the region. But how do you stop?
Yeah. Uh, now, Mr. Taneja, I would like to bring you in, and I would like to ask you. We were talking about Houthis. So you see the Houthis, what they're doing in the Red Sea, it is going to disrupt the trade further. Do you think any normalcy is going to come in near future? Is any economic peace going to happen there? And also, what do you feel about Saudi Arabia's role? Has it grown in last few years? Your views.
Sure. The Houthis were. You have to remember that Houthis were a ragtag militia only till a couple of years ago, right? It was 5 people sharing one Kalashnikov amongst each other. They had absolutely no capacities about disrupting international trade in waterways. Right now, today they are armed with ballistic missiles. They're armed with cruise missiles. They're armed with even automated underwater drones and so on and so forth. So they have really been built up largely with Iranian support as part of their axis of resistance. So I think they are the only one at this point of time that are kinetically sort of challenging Israel every now and then. We are not hearing too much from Hezbollah because Hezbollah is sort of on the back foot significantly. Hamas, of course, barring the Jerusalem terror attack, where around 6-7 people I think were murdered, where Hamas did take. I mean, they did claim the attack, and I think that was also what led to Israel attacking Qatar in a couple of hours later. Houthis it's an interesting thing because yes, I think there are still disruptions that we are not sort of reading on a daily basis anymore. And the other interesting thing that has happened is that the number of naval deployments have decreased actually. Right, so the disruptions may not be that high, but the disruptions are still there. That means there is a requirement for naval deployments to be in and around the Red Sea region to make sure that something as critical as the Suez Canal is relatively free of disruptions. And now the other thing that is now coming up is that international companies that use the Suez Canal, are sort of turning more towards to private sector security companies to provide that kind of cover to their ships and vessels traversing through these waters, rather than relying on, let's say, the US capacity or the British capacity and so on and so forth. Till only 5-6 months ago, we were hearing on a weekly basis that Americans are bombing Sana'a, Americans are bombing parts of Houthi establishments. The Americans sent B-2 bombers that attacked Iran from all the way from Australia to bomb Yemen, and then went back. All of that has stopped, right? And I think some of it has to do with the fact that there is some sort of outreach with the Iranians as well, especially with the Europeans, that some kind of expectation may come out again that a deal could be struck with Tehran. I'm not very sure if that is on the horizon or not, but now that there is a degradation of Iranian nuclear capacities, I think the Americans and the Europeans believe this may be the best and only time in the near future where they can sort of push Iran to meet them on the table. And which is why we have seen less Western action in Yemen than in anything else. But of course, the Israelis are continuing to target the Houthis in Yemen. But having said that, the Houthis are not an existential crisis for Israel. Now, if the Houthis are being seen as the core competition for Israel as part of the axis of resistance, I don't think the Israelis will mind that at all. They're not neither on the border; they're very far away. Even if they launch, they're very rudimentary when it comes to technology missiles towards Israel. Israel has plenty of time to try and stop them midair, because Israel technologically is much more better equipped than the Houthis. So the Houthis are going to be that kind of organization that is going to be troublesome. It's like having a thorn in your toe. But it is not going to be of the same threat level that Hamas is or Hezbollah is, right? And I'm saying is because you can't discount either of these groups. One thing that the Israelis have done right now is that they've embarked on, I think Colonel Agarwal would be very equipped to expand on this strategy called mowing the grass, right? So basically they will sort of conduct these quick, fast, rapid fire military actions to make sure that those kind of threat levels that existed prior to October 7 2023 are unable to rebuild themselves, right? So in Lebanon we are now seeing there is immense pressure on Hezbollah to give up arms, and that is pushed by the new presidency, which is backed by the Saudi Arabians, by the Europeans and the Americans. Hamas, of course, as we are saying, the Israelis are absolutely pounding Gaza right now, hoping that Hamas basically disintegrates by itself, releases the hostages by its own merit. Again, I'm not sure if that is going to happen anytime in the near future. But anything that is coming up, they have disintegrated, at least in the short term, the Iranian nuclear program. They've shown willingness to the Gulf states that if you are going to sort of go down that path where you're hosting Hamas in central Dubai or central Doha, it is fair game for us. And the Gulf countries will be very anxious going forward, because look, the entire big economic projects, which is Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, one missile in downtown center of many of these cities can nullify what they've achieved for the past 30-40 years, right? And none of them would want that. So they had tried to rebuild, they had tried to build a level of neutrality. So they cut a deal with the Iranians. Like, for example, they normalized with the Iranians, the Saudis normalized with the Iranians, while the Emiratis also signed the Abraham Accords. The Saudis also opened back channels with the Israelis and have been for a long period of time. They just didn't want to get involved in what was happening. And I think that illusion has been removed when the Qatar attack happened. So we will see some sort of real world changes in the Gulf states, but I don't think it's going to be kinetic in nature, but they will definitely reevaluate some of their policies.
Colonel Agarwal, Kabir was talking about some real world changes. So I would like to ask you, do you feel that extra regional powers, especially China, has increased its influence in West Asia? And do you feel that there is a hedging between US and China? One question is this. Secondly, what do you feel will be the Turkey's role in West Asia? And also, how do you feel India should address West Asia? And
thank you,
can we have
Roshan.
Yeah, and the last part is, what should India's approach be? We already have an economic partnership with a lot of countries, and we have an IMAC. So if you can highlight all these three questions.
Okay. So firstly on China, like it was mentioned earlier also by the panelists, right now the US security umbrella is what we should call a TINA factor. There's no other alternative as far as the Gulf states are concerned. So if the US is not playing up, it is complicit with Israel, and it is not able to, deliver on the security guarantees. And it is not the first time that has happened. that US has not delivered on the security assurances. If you take your mind back, even in September, August 2019, when Houthi missiles struck Saudi Arabian, oil fields, or in January 2022, when Abu Dhabi was struck by a missile, nowhere could the US stop any of these, strikes. So, to me, these assurances are very superfluous and ineffective. But problem is there is no other solution right now with the Arab nations. They have tried to buy security by having huge military bases from US, UK, etc., having their troops positioned, and they have not built enough capacities within themselves, individually and collectively, to safeguard their own territorial integrity. So this is not an overnight solution. If they progress on a path to safeguard their own territorial integrity themselves or with other reliable partners, it's a long road and it is going to take time. China is not in the business of providing security guarantees. China is not in the business of putting boots on ground, and China is not in the business of fighting any regional war which is outside its own immediate periphery in the China's neighborhood and extended neighborhood. So there is no competition as far as US and China is concerned on the military front. Yes, China is competing furiously as far as the economic engagement with the West Asian countries is concerned, both north and south of the Persian Gulf, and there it has made huge inroads, both individually as well as collectively with the GCC and the Belt and Road Initiative, the conduit of transportation which passes through many of the countries, is one example of that. There are many other engagements. I think the last I heard was China and Saudi Arabia have also signed a deal or made some agreement on civil nuclear power plant, etc. Something. So China is very clear. It is going for deep engagement economically, not only in the Gulf region but everywhere. And military is not the kind of engagement that it is looking at. Coming to your question on Turkey, Turkey is one major player which is not talked often in the discussions on West Asia, because it gets restricted to Israel, Gaza, and when Gaza comes, basically the Arab Gulf nation comes in the discourse. But Turkey is playing a long game, and Turkey is very active in Syria. We saw how Turkish-backed militia was, active in the overthrow of Assad. Turkey is trying to expand its influence elsewhere also, and Turkey is playing a long game. So, on any discussion on Turkey vis-a-vis Israel is going to be a very hard ball. And if Israel takes on Turkey, it's a double whammy for the US, because Turkey is not only a NATO partner where the US will be forced to act as per Article 5, but also Turkey is a formidable military power, unlike many other countries in the West. So Turkey is a hard nut to crack, and it is on in its own expansion strategy, which is very difficult to stop right now, because it is not doing too many things overtly. It is doing in an underhand manner. Coming to India, I mean, India is caught in a bind, I would say very frankly, as far as this situation is concerned, because for India, Israel is a strategic partner. Israel has been one of the only few countries which has stood by India in the worst of its times, going back as back as to the 1999 Kargil war. And so India is finding it very difficult to, what I say, give a rap on the knuckle to Israel whenever there is a situation which demands it. So we saw even after the attack in Qatar, the MEA statement which came out initially was only talking about concern over the escalating situation, etc. It was only 24 hours later when Prime Minister Modi gave his tweet where he condemned, the strike against the sovereignty of Qatar, and obviously he didn't name Israel. And yesterday at the UNHRC meeting also, India was very categorical in joining many other nations in condemning the attacks in Qatar. So India is finding it very difficult to maintain this fine balance. But what I have to say is that if the partnership with Israel is strong and close, and which is very obvious, then there should be that kind of confidence that the Indian establishment is able to give a public rap on the knuckle to Israel, and Israel also takes it on the shin that yes, this is what India's foreign policy dictates, and we have to accept it, and we have to, expect it also. And this was one thing which I saw yesterday also when we were in a seminar where it was expressed that we respect what India is doing, because India also has to project and protect its foreign policy interests. So this is what I would say. And just coming to the Israel and Gaza, I would say that Kabir was mentioning about it, that how many threats Israel has nullified. Hezbollah has been kept down continuously. Lebanon, southern Lebanon is being pounded, and Israel has not vacated southern Lebanon. But my question to Israel has always been this over the past 2 years, that Israelis were the masters, and we have learned from Israel how to conduct swift operations in and out and then get on with it. This time, Israel has got stuck in a war which is an unending war, and today it does not know how to extricate itself. So rather than finding ways to wind up the war, find an opportunity to declare a decisive victory, it is getting more and more entrenched into this attrition war. And what it is not understanding is that some of all the tactical victories that it is achieving, whether it was against the Hezbollah or Iran or Syria or Hamas or PIJ in West Bank or against Houthi, the sum of tactical victories will not deliver it the strategic or decisive victory till the time the military objective is well defined and realistic.
I think we'll take few questions quickly because there are a few questions. So I will start with Aishwarya. Aishwarya is a RA in clause, and she is an expert in West Asia because she looks that area. So Aishwarya, we'll start with you. You please ask your questions. You unmute your mic.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Thank you, ma'am. And it was a very insightful discussion. So a big thank you to all the panelists as well. I just had one question, and I think Kabir sir also mentioned this, that there was a lot of division internally within Israel when this strike was being launched. The IDF chief, the Mossad chief, there was also the national security advisors. They were all sort of against this strike. Also, given that the payoff of the strike wasn't that great, and I know I'm going a little bit further, this topic has been discussed a bit, but just a little more insight on what was what was the goal of this strike. It did not achieve largely what it set out to achieve. It jeopardized relations with, well, not jeopardized, but it did sort of put it under scrutiny with Qatar and the Gulf states, and it's created more chaos, and it wasn't one of the swift operations that we've heard of. So, what was the likely payoff of this strike if they weren't able to sort of neutralize the targets that they did set out to do?
We'll start with Meena, you, and then others can answer.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, this internet, there's some problem with this. Probably, the StreamYard, it looks like last time. But anyways, I think I left in middle and I didn't hear what the Kabir said. But on this question, how this is going to unfold, the situation, the internal, disagreements as far as IDF is concerned, Mossad is concerned, and the security establishment. I personally feel the Israel for now will continue despite these differences. Prime Minister Netanyahu is actually going to continue with this, capturing basically the Gaza city. I don't think the military option they are ruling out, and they will continue it. That is what I feel for now. This is simply because of the assessment that they've done based on their own new security strategy, which they have adopted and talked about. So for now, whether they achieve their desired goal of eliminating Hamas, which I feel is not going to, probably you can't eliminate Hamas like that. I mean, the more you kill, the more you produce such people. So it is not something. Have they been able to, achieve the goal of stability, peace, development in Afghanistan? No, they haven't. and military only delays, it gives you some time to, decide, and then, assess the situation and then look for the dialogue. You cannot continue, this kind of an endless military operation. But for now, unfortunately, the establishment, in Israel, has taken a decision to continue. I mean, there's not one statement which comes out, there is opposition. You read the media within Israel, you talk to people where there is a division, on the focus which Mr. Netanyahu should give on bringing back the hostages. That is not happening, and the region is helpless today. And so I don't think, this war is going to end. For now, that is what it seems. The only, country which can put pressure on is United States. Unfortunately, that is not happening at the moment. As far as China is concerned, China is busy building its, assets. They are investing billions of dollars. Whether we are looking at North Africa, look at Jordan, look at Morocco, look at Egypt. I mean, they are taking full advantage of this situation, and they are not going to replace United States of America in this region. There is diversification within, when you talk about Saudi Arabia. Yes, there are defense security cooperation which is happening, but it is not going to, probably happen overnight. It is the United States will continue to have its military presence there. It will continue to be an important force there. So I think this is what the hard reality is. We can discuss and talk about it. If there is any shared security vision, in the region, that is not there. For this is the only region which has invited foreign, military intervention for securing, the security. But unfortunately, there is no security, there is no stability, and unfortunately, the countries which were, doing well, like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they are also today, entangled, in this war on Gaza. They cannot de-link themselves. What happens in West Bank, we really don't know what would be the red line for them. As far as the statements which have come out from Saudi foreign minister, from the foreign ministers of the region, they say, if you continue to do that, and but the Israel is going on with their settlement policy. Every day news are there, how the system is working out there. So I think for now, so long as Prime Minister Netanyahu continues on the political stage, controlling various aspects of Israel, I think this is what we are going to see. And if United States really decides to control, then that is what will happen.
I think we have a very important question here, which is raised by Mr. Sudhakarji, and Kabir and Col Agarwal, both of you can give your thing. What is the way forward? That's the basic thing. You start
So
with Kabir.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. Look, if I knew what the way forward is, I would win the Nobel Prize before Donald Trump would. Right. So I'm not going to get into the crystal ball gazing game for the Middle East. It's a futile exercise. No one really knows the way the forward is going to be. But I think that whatever the way forward is going to be determined by Israeli actions. Right. It is going to be determined by Israeli decisions for the time being. The other aspect that I think a lot of people would be waiting for is ultimately what is the ceiling and red line for the Gulf states. I think the attack on Qatar would, as I said previously, would unnerve a lot of the Gulf states on just the fact that Israeli military is now almost uncontested as far as aerial superiority is concerned across the region. I mean, look, as Colonel Agarwal was mentioning earlier, Qatar is a buyer of some of the top military equipment from the Americans. If you see the Air Force, it has, I think, every kind of high-tech jet in its fleet. And of course, it hosts Al Udeid Air Base, which is sort of the biggest airways in the region. And the fact that Qatar has been targeted twice this year. First by the Iranians, let's not forget. Yes, they did target the American base, but the American base wasn't in the air; it was inside Qatar. And now, with the Israelis directly targeting central Doha, I think a lot of concerns uh, are already being raised within the Gulf states, and there has to be some sort of feeling that all of them have on moving forward. So I will not completely discount at least a dilution, let's say, of the Abraham Accords if Israel decides to sort of target other sections or parts of the Gulf states going forward. And now that the Israelis have also sort of made it very, very, I think, crystal clear that they will go after not just Hamas, but whatever critical threats that have prevailed for a long period of time. They are using the October 7th attack as the best option at this time to make sure that none of that comes back in any shape or form, that they will have to fight again. If you see a lot of the operations that we are seeing, they clearly have been planned for years. So Israel had actually planned for a lot of these operations for a long period of time. They have built those capacities. It was always a political decision that was required to go forward and try to dismantle a lot of these entities. And very finally, we have to also just remember, as Dr. Roy was also sort of alluding to, the domestic part of what is happening in Israel. Let's not forget that Netanyahu's hand is also twisted by the fact that his coalition partners are from the far right, and they want and they seek this kind of movement from the Israeli establishment kinetically to take on these threats very, very directly. And they made it very clear, for example, that if Netanyahu does cut a deal with Hamas, they will withdraw support, and that means that the government is in all probability possibly could come down. Now, very final point, just for 2 minutes. Now, some crystal ball gazing, I'll give you that. Okay, right? Could go completely wrong, but let me try. What could happen is that by 2026, when Israel is supposed to go to elections, Netanyahu could try to build enough support by himself, where if he's contesting elections in 2026 inside Israel, he may not require the help of the far right to constitute his government. Right? It is. I think Israel has never had a fully majority government, but going back on the back of a significant war, where he can market Hezbollah's destruction, where he can market Hamas's dilution, where he can say that we took the Iranian nuclear program offline. It's a possibility that can put him on a significant pedestal when the elections come to fray next year. But we'll have to wait and watch and what happens.
Col Agarwal, you can answer what is the way forward, but also there is a question by Anusuya. She says, if Bibi is going to take over Gaza and not stop until it happens, in humanitarian context, what is the future of Palestinians? Are the countries that are supporting Israel going to give asylum?
So, Dr. Roshan, coming to the first question, day after, there is no day after right now in anybody's mind frame. We had gone to Israel in the month of July, and even there, the officials in the ministry say that we don't have any day after in sight till the time the kinetic operations don't end. There is, as Kabir mentioned earlier, there's a lot of disagreement on the concept and the military objectives which have been set out or forced upon the Israeli Defense Forces, and that is why there is no day after which has been defined by themselves. Coming to how can it end, the only way it can end is when Israel decides itself to end it. Now, whether it happens by the political will or the public pressure or something else, it is not defined. US is not going to do it. The region does not have the capability, capacity, or the will to do it, and Israel is running berserk across the region wherever it wants to. The only person who can stop this war at whichever point it wants to declare a decisive victory is Israel itself. Coming to the point about what is going to happen to Palestinians, again, they are at the mercy of whatever is being brought upon them in the Gaza Strip. I saw the reports where thousands and thousands are on the road yesterday evening, making do with whatever they could gather and running away from north to south again to a designated tented site, and that tented site is again going to be bombarded because that is a designated target. So Palestinians right now do not have a future. They are just staring at death and starvation. The figures of death are so wide ranging that it is shocking to say the least. The official figures of Gaza ministry says 64,500. The ex-IDF chief says it is anything more than 200,000. And there's a report done by a team of doctors who went through the remains, etc., and all that, which say the figure could be as large as 680,000. So the amount of death and destruction that has been caused and that is in the offing is nobody's guess. And yes, no country is right now willing to take on the Palestinian. If that was the option, this problem would have been solved, many months ago. This offer was made to a number of countries, but no country is willing to take the Palestinians, which was the initial offer when Trump came to power, when he said, "I'll make a Rivera of the Middle East, vacate all, the Gaza Strip, send all the Palestinians out of Gaza Strip, give me 5 years, I'll make it into the most beautiful resort in the world, and then we can get back people to live and serve the Gaza Strip." So there's no future right now for Palestinians who are there in Gaza Strip.
Meena, you want to say something? You can, and you can take this question. Last question we'll take. Israel actions against both Iran and Qatar show they are not serious about negotiating peace. Why would countries going forward want to pursue talks with Israel? Please unmute your mic.
Yeah, as far as the Palestinian issue is concerned, I think the people are going to suffer. That is unfortunate part of it, because the region is divided. Nobody wants the responsibility. And secondly, on this question of why should you negotiate with Israel? My personal view is at the moment, as we see, you can only talk about the current situation. What happens tomorrow, crystal grazing, is the most difficult aspect as far as the Middle East is concerned. Nevertheless, I would say that Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't want to come on the negotiating table. He is looking at, the future. What happens in 2026? There was a reference made to it while Kabir was looking at how things can unfold by then. But, he wants to come out as a winner. See, when he started the whole thing, they realized that there is October 7 has changed a lot of things in Israel. That is what is the hard reality. Whether it is their security doctrine, whether how they approach, the counterterrorism measures, how what should be done, to eliminate this threat, not only in their neighborhood but also beyond neighborhood. So I think this is what is the situation right now. So negotiating with, look at the timing of the Qatar attack. I mean, they were just about to come on the negotiating table. There were, visits of, all the officials from Israel, from US, from Egypt, and, but the point here is, who wants to negotiate? Is Israel serious about negotiations and bringing peace? For them, the peace will only come when they eliminate Hamas. And eliminating Hamas means flattening Gaza, eradicating the complete threat and destroying the infrastructure built by. I mean, there are problems at that end. One can understand those, because sitting here, in bigger country, you can't understand the problems and the mindset and the psychology of the people who are dealing, and looking at the security issues in a completely different manner. When your geography, you look at the missile attacks from Iran and the damage that they have done to Israel. So they feel, this is their perception, that they can eliminate the basically the Hamas, which I think is very, very difficult task. So the peace will only come when, as both my panelists have said, when the Israel and Mr. Netanyahu decide. It will also not happen, but look at the very important point which the Israeli officials have been making is about the hostages.
Marco Rubio also, when he went, he talked about the release of hostages. What is holding on Hamas not to release the hostages? Can war end with the release of hostages? We have to see. It's a big question there. Now, there have been statements coming from, all political establishments that the release, once you release hostages, we will stop. There would be ceasefire. But you see how, every time there is a debate and, negotiation which is about to happen, ceasefire is something which is not happening, because, both sides are pretty rigid when it comes to agreeing on terms and conditions. They want to completely disarm Hamas. They want to completely destroy the infrastructure, and that is not something which is acceptable to the other side of it. And on top of it, they have the full support of the United States of America when the region is divided. So I think peace is something which is, I don't know, I'm not very optimistic at this point in time. But let us pray and hope for the innocent people and the civilians and the kids who are suffering in Gaza. This is unacceptable.
I think you rightly pointed out Gaza is really suffering a lot, and I hope peace comes in that region. And I would like to thank all our panelists for such a detailed discussion on West Asia. Thank you so much for joining today. Thanks a lot.